This is Thomas Novacell. I do a lot of fantasy art, and I recently did a blog post detailing all of the various tools that I use to do RPG illustrations and just draw in general. So we're gonna, by request, someone commented and asked it would be nice to look through some of your stuff. I have a bunch of originals right here, and we're gonna go through, and I'm just gonna try to see if I can remember what tools I used for each one. So we're gonna start with this one. This one was something I did not that long ago because I was trying to do kind of like a pop art kind of style. And specifically for this, I remember I used a Pentel Pocket Brush Pen, which is very fun. It's synthetic brush. It has uses cartridges so that when you're out, it's a shorter synthetic brush. It's not as long as the Kuretake number 8 that I also have. Then I also remember I used a Pentel Food Touch sign pen for this, specifically for some of these right here. Those lines, some of the smaller ones, the smaller little tongue bits. These taller ones, I actually use the Pentel brush for. You can tell because of the crazy line that I had to do with them. And a lot of the like really heavy black shading was done with that as well. I think that's all I used for this one. This is something I actually did in pencil about this big. Then I scanned it, blew it up, and then printed it on a piece of cardstock at like a low opacity. And then I was able to draw over top of it. So, moving on. This is one of my Aldridge City illustrations. It's my dark fantasy city. There's tons of location art for it. I've been working on it for a while. And specifically for this, I used only this pen. I did pencil lines underneath, and then I only used this Rotring Rapidograph 0.25. Cartridge based. It has a metal tip, which is very, very hard to see. Which is very nice. It's very durable. It creates very crisp lines all across. If you can tell. I enjoyed this one. So moving on, since I only used one pen for that. Alright. I had a bunch of copier paper that I drew on at one point, and I was just playing with gel pens. I don't actually have the gel pen that I used. It was kind of like the standard gel pen that you can just get anywhere. I think it was a G2 or something. It was fun. I was looking at a lot of Bixinxi stuff, so playing with fingers. Then here we have one that I did with a Micron. Specifically, I used a couple Microns, but the big one I used was a 005 to get all these nice, fine hatch marks, crazy fingers, kind of like drug-infused creature. This was before I had the rapidographs, or I had ink for the rapidographs, so I think this took an entire pen, and you can kind of tell where the 005 was starting to wear down. Like down here, you can kind of see like, actually right here is a good example. Right here, you can tell the lines are not as crisp as over here. And that's because I have a lot of pressure in my hands when I draw. I'm a lefty, and it causes me some issues. So that's why I prefer the rapidographs now over the microns, is because this doesn't wear down, whereas this does when I use it, no matter how hard I try to keep it light. But yeah, so I only used a micron for that, specifically the 005, and then I think I used a 01 or a 02 to do some of this outline. This was an illustration I did for a recently released Dungeon Crawl Classics third-party adventure. I think it was Crimson Sky. And this is kind of like a little adventure map I did for them. It's in the book, but this is something I did with microns again. So I used a 005. Actually, I used a 005. Actually, two of them. The first one got worn down enough that you can actually tell a difference in the bricks, in that it's a lot more frayed out. It's a lot sketchier kind of thing. So versus say the ones up here. Kind of see a difference as I wear down the pen. So this took two. And that's all I used for it, was just that. And then I also used, I think, a 001 to go around this outside edge right here to darken it up. There was hatch marks and everything, so that was fun. This is an equipment illustration I did for the Patreon. Specifically, I think it was 10 or 12 equipment illustrations. All of them I did on 8.5 by 11, and then I shrunk down to fit on a half-size zine. For this, I can't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure I used microns. And then I also used I used a brush pen. I used this one. I used this brush pen, and then I used microns to go through and get all these little things. This, again, was before I had the rapidographs with ink and everything. So I really like this one. The other ones, some of them got really messy, but this is the one I was most proud of. It was some kind of living whip that you could beat people with. It had thorns, and people would like go hunt it in a cave, but specifically it would scramble across the ground or the walls to return back to the user after being used. I wrote OSR stats for it and also indie hack stats for it, so that's over on the Patreon and my website for free now. But then over here we have 2 monster illustrations I did again for the Patreon. This one was a friend's spider creature. Faceless robot spider creature. This one's a flump. Someone asked me to draw a flump. Now, I really, really like the flump. This one I did using solely microns. I used this micron, and then I used they have a thick tip, kind of like a chisel-tipped micron marker, and I used that to fill in some of these black areas. But this again was a 005 kind of thing for the entire thing. I think there's also 01s in some of the places up here, but I'm pretty sure it's mostly 005. But I really like the flump enough that it's like the header for my web store. So a lot of these are microns. This one was me playing with the extent that I could use the rapidograph. In other words, it was just a sketch. I was playing with some texture, essentially trying to create depth. So a lot of just playing around. This was in March. And I thought it was pretty cool. Not enough that I would obviously sell it or anything, because it's really not centered. It wasn't planned. It was just drawn out in pen. But I think it shows some pretty cool stuff that I was playing around with. So that was micron, and I'm pretty sure I used another size in it too. I used the 0.35, which is significantly larger. Here's a city illustration that I did for a commission. It's going in some kind of campaign supplement or setting supplement. But this one I did using the rapidograph. You can tell because almost all the lines are exactly the same width. Just everywhere. Which I think was kind of a failing of this. Like, while I think it is really, really good, I like it, there are a few things that I do not like that I did about it. I wish I'd used different width, kind of like on the things that are closer. That way they showed up as closer. But that's the main thing. But overall, I like this one. This one was a rapidograph one that I did. Then we have another illustration map for that Crimson Sky adventure. This one was I guess, adventure map with some stones and everything. This one I used microns on, and it actually took 2 pens to do. And by the end, one of my pens was, like, seriously dying somewhere in here. You can kind of tell as it goes across up here, it gets a little bit frayed. I really like this one overall. I remember I used Actually, no, I used a Sharpie to do the heavy black. This was before I was using, because this was late last year. I'm pretty sure. No, it was maybe early or late. It was one of the two, but I liked this one. It was fun to do. It was pretty cool. I like these trees up here. These trees up here are pretty nice. They're just eating people and everything. This one is one that I'm super proud of for Eldritch City. This one I did using solely this pen again, the 0.25. And I really love this picture. It's probably one of my favorite things I've drawn. Just in texture, in shape and form, in that it looks like it's looming, and which was the purpose. That it's gross, it has some cool stuff going on, there's obvious... You can tell what it is while looking at it, and I like it. But yeah, so that was just the 0.5 Rapidograph. This was a illustration I did for Gavin Norman and Greg Gorgon Milk's zine. This was a witch. I was like brewing over it. This one I used microns for. And I liked kind of like the texture right here. I kind of like this. It feels kind of like gelatinous more than smoke though. There were some lines that touched that I wish hadn't touched. The hands could have been formed differently, but this one was a micron one. I used a 005 for most of it, and then I used a 03 and a 02 for some of the lines to just thicken things up, and then I used the chisel brush, or the chisel tip microns for the black fill-in. Here was a big city thing for Aldridge City that I did using microns. And specifically, you can tell because over here is lighter than over here. Because the pen started to fray, and I did not switch pens at the moment because I had no extra ones going on. So that's how that came to be. It was supposed to be kind of like, oh, this is a built-up fake wall. Like behind here, there's just all these wooden beams and things holding up this facade, I think is the word. And then there's a wall, and then behind it are more cities because this is a district. I like this one. It was pretty cool. It was fun to do. It took the longest, but it was also the first one I did like this. So, but it was also the first one I did like this. Sorry, my phone cut out, so I have to start again with this part. So yeah, first one I did like this. The micron pen just started fraying as I used it over the course of it because I didn't have another pen to switch to. But I really liked it. Here is the Aldridge City cover that I did. Essentially like building and like bird ruins and then a black star in the sky. This was solely done so I could have a cool cover. So I liked it. I mean, I edited out that obviously digitally, but I like this one. It was kind of gross. I did this using the Rapidograph. Just the one size for it. Here's another picture I did for Greg Gorgon Milk and Gavin Norman's zine. This one is a keep on top of a cliff near some water. I really like this one. I used various sizes of the Rapidograph. I used this one. So the 3.5 and then the 2.5. And I went through and was very careful. I was looking at different textures that wood engravings do and like etchings. So Door, Duror, etc. was kind of like inspiration for trying to get this hatching to be better. And I think it got close. It got closer to where I wanted it to be. Obviously, practice would make a big difference. But I think I like this one. It came out pretty well as far as I'm concerned. Then we have some little ones. Just some little sketchy ones. Here's a map I did for Chris Stieha's zine for whenever he wants to use it. I did that using this Rapidograph for literally everything except these outlines. For the outlines, I used this bigger one, the 3.5. And then this one, I used these two again. It's kind of like a self-portrait doodle without any planning. I like this kind of like line thing here. Probably should play with it more. It could make some cool stuff. This part right here I was watching a Peter Draws video at the time. So that probably shows a lot of why it came out the way it did. Then, this was a very, very recent commission that used a variety of things. It was based off of a Three Hairs Cthulhu concept, and I used the Zebra disposable brush pen. I used the Pentel Food Touch, and then I also used this one, which I'm a big fan of, which is the Tambo Fudu. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like Fudu no Suki, I think, or Suke. But it's essentially the size. It creates lines the size of a 005, and it has some nice heavy resistance. And I like it a lot. But so that's about all I got to show for that But I hope that shows off some of the stuff that I've done. A lot of tools I'm using more and more often, but I hope that gives an idea of what I've been doing and learning with these specific tools. This one took quite a while. I also used a non-photo blue pencil for it, for planning, which made a huge difference, I think, overall in the thing. But I think that's it. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that showed something about it, and I have a blog post with links to all the tools that I use, and that I have essentially, in case you want to find purchases and everything, as well as I have my essentially art tool pouch list on one separate thing in case you want to look at that too. But this was all done on cardstock, specifically really cheap cardstock. Buy 150 sheets for $5. Because I go through cardstock. I go through paper pretty quick, but I like it because it's thicker, it's not as bendy, but it's also not as expensive as what is it? Bristol paper, Bristol board. But all right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed.